Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. So today there was a patch, very simple patch, 3.16.1 Hotfix 2. This was simply a couple of exploit fixes. So the first exploit, I knew about this one, I didn't know about the second one, was that Gilded fossils they were basically broken. When you apply a Gilded fossil to an item, it scrambles the modifiers just like using a Chaos Orb on the item does. So you don't use this on an item that's good. But when you do it, it also applies a new modifier to the item, a new implicit modifier, that this item is overvalued by vendors. Now, it used to be, there was a more serious version of this exploit. When you attempted to vendor the item, the game would immediately tell you what the reward would be. So you would vendor the item, you would put it in the vendor window, and you were offered an Exalt back, and you'd be like, oh yeah. Or you'd be offered 2 Mirror Shards back, which is the best outcome and is only like 1 in 23,000. And you'd be like, oh yeah. And for a brief period of time, you could use Fractured Fossils, which worked differently back then, and essentially duplicate these 2 Mirror Shards. That got hotfixed out very quickly. Then for another period of time, you could, if you weren't happy with the outcome on a map, you could then apply a Horizon Orb, and then the new map would re-roll the effect of the Gilded Fossil. So that had already been solved. The way they solved that was by making it so that when you vended an item that had a Gilded Fossil in it, you would receive back a mystery reward, and only when you committed to vendoring the item would you actually find out whether you'd been awarded 1 Exalted Orb, or whether you'd been awarded 5 Chaos Orbs, or something else entirely. So that's how it was going into 3.16. But there was one thing that was really noticeable. 2 of the more common and not very desirable outcomes took up more than 1 space in your inventory. So there was one that gave you 1 of every currency fusing and down from memory. That's something like that. It was about 18 different currency orbs. And the other one gave you 3 or 4 different currency orbs. Neither of these were desirable outcomes. And so what people would do would be apply a Gilded Fossil to a map, take it to the vendor. If they were offered 1 item, they would commit to the trade. If they were not offered 1 item, if they were offered more than 1 item, then they would apply a Horizon Orb to it. So the relevant outcomes from the Gilded Fossil have been changed, and now they will also only provide 1 item back in return. As for Gilded Fossils in general, I just don't think they're a good design. I don't think that they should remain in the game. I wouldn't mind seeing unset rings be given a way to get this sort of extra implicit on them, so that people could have an attempt to, a way to sort of gamble with their very, very, very late league unique unset rings and try and make something absolutely monstrous using all sorts of shenanigans. But I think that this is something that is, just not working well in the game at the moment, and I'd be happy to see Gilded Fossils go on myself. They've caused so many problems in the past with the economy. Whilst this exploit wasn't very bad, some of the previous ones were basically allowing the duplication of Exalted Orbs for a period, and you get a few people that cheat and get hundreds of Exalts, even thousands of Exalts before it gets fixed. I'd be happy to see them go on, just so that GGG don't have to prioritize doing these sorts of emergency fixes early in the league, when the league could do with some other changes instead. The second thing was a bug with the Tainted Divine Teardrop, which could do a bunch of really broken things. So it was allowing the raising of crafted modifiers to values higher than usually obtainable, or changing them to crafted mods that were not normally possible to get on the item type. And so that's being fixed. And the items that were created in this method, because this felt like less of an exploit and more of just people using experimentation to find out how something works and then finding out it works a certain way and thinking that they're doing the right thing, GG are leaving these items intact until the end of the league. I actually think this is the right decision because these items can't be mirrored. At the end of the league, they will be nerfed back to what they would have been if the Tainted Divine Teardrop had not worked on that mod. There's a couple other things that have been changed, like there's a bug where the Tainted Divine Teardrop was not able to raise or lower the tier of some modifiers. Not actually sure what that's going to mean. And a bug where a particular achievement couldn't be achieved. So one thing question that I have coming out of this, and I can't verify this yet, is the interaction between Tainted Divine Teardrops and elevated mods. can you can you use a Tainted Divine Teardrop to take a tier 1 mod and replace it with the elevated tier 0 version? Can you apply a Tainted Divine Teardrop to an item that has an elevated mod on it and have your hopes and spirits crushed because it drops down to tier 1? I don't know the answers to that. That's something that we're going to have to find out exactly how it works post changes. But that's all I got on this patch. It's a pretty small one. If you got comments or questions, definitely fire away below. Otherwise, may your Varlorbs have interesting results, and I will see you around.